Hello and welcome back to the channel. A little while ago we had a series of 3 videos with a Renault Clio. I nicknamed that one the Ratty Renault because it wasn't in the best of conditions when we started off working on it. That was actually Swampy's Autos project, and by the time it was finished, Swampy had turned that into really quite a nice car. So this is now video number 3 of the Navara series. This is also a Swampy's Auto project, and he's done it again, and he's taken on something that needs quite a bit of work doing to it. This one I have decided I'm going to nickname the Knackered Navara. Stick with the video and you'll see why. Where Swampy's at with this project is that the engine is now running. It's had a fully rebuilt turbo fitted. We covered that in a lot of detail in video number 2. And it's also got a temporary blanking plate fitted in the EGR system. There's something wrong with the EGR that is preventing the engine from starting without this blanking plate being fitted. The engine also needs fluid changes. Both the coolant and the oil are pretty nasty. There's a couple of nasty noises coming from the engine bay that need to be sorted out, and we think that the turbo is overboosting. So Swampy is on his way up to start dealing with that lot. I'm just going to get things started for him by just whipping the grille off of the front of the vehicle.
Scotty's kindly taken off the front of the car here, so we've got the all of the grill off above the bumper, so we can get to the intercooler. I wanted to have a look. I've done some quick research and thought, well, maybe the turbo flutter that we're hearing on one of the other videos, maybe that's actually come from having too much boost, and maybe the boost controller not working. We're seeing on the computer data that there was actually no boost pressure showing. It was just showing atmospheric pressure of 101, 102 kilopascals. So decided to have a look at the manifold air pressure sensor. Just gone to have a look at it, and I got an explanation as to why it was showing only air pressure, because it's not actually attached to anything, which we're wondering whether that would lead to a situation therefore where the ECU thinks that it needs to command more boost, therefore it never releases the vanes in the turbo, and therefore continues to boost even when there's plenty of boost in the system. Those GT2056V turbos are only really good up to like 23 psi or so. So unfortunately, maybe where we've started it and it's been running, where we've revved it slightly only to sort of 2000 revs after we've known we've got some oil in it, that actually maybe we've caused some damage to that. So may have made a bit of a fatal mistake. But gonna have a look at this, see if the map works, take it off, do some testing on it, just measure the voltage across the signal pin and the ground, see whether it changes when we change the pressure on it, and then put it back in, and maybe have a look and see whether there's any reasons this is making any other funny noises that we detected. Having to be really careful with this because it's just on a very flimsy piece of plastic sticking out from the intercooler. I think for the most outer one, I'll stick some duck oil on here, and then that will make it a bit easier. Can't easily apply any heat to it because it's into plastic. This might be test in situ. Stick a vacuum tester on there, see if we can get a difference in the value. "27 inches of mercury." So the sensor definitely works because it's changed. That's excellent. The plan now is to put this CHRA, the old one, back together and see if we can attach the oil pipe to it, and hopefully then we can get some oil to go through it while the engine's running. We can try and work out then what the other noises are, because there was an absolutely horrible noise on engine shutdown. Even with the turbo not on, it was sat on the bench here. There's a horrible squealing noise. So I think it might be the aircon compressor on the clutch on that. So if we can resolve that issue, we can look and see whether we have actually really done any damage to this other turbo, and then we can see where we go from there. So I've managed to concoct a way to seal this up. So there's a piece of rubber pipe in one side, piece of rolled pipe behind that washer in there, and I'll just put a long bolt through the middle, done them up. That seems to be sealing not so bad, doesn't need to have anything on it. All it needs to do is loop the oil round from the small hole to the big hole, and we can put it on the car and hold that up. That should at least stop the oil going absolutely everywhere. And then we can briefly run the engine. It's got no coolant in it at the moment, but there's enough in there for it to turn over and run briefly, and then we can check to see what that horrible noise is that's not the turbo. So I've got this CHR8 on there now. I'm going to test it, make sure that there's no oil leaking from it. Then what I'll do, I've also got the computer over here as well, so we'll start putting something over here and restricting this a little bit, just to see whether we can show that the map sensor, which is down the front here, is actually reading properly, and then we can see on the computer what that's actually doing. Once I get this to a certain point, it should stall the engine anyway, because it should not have enough air. It will probably be rather noisy, so let's see how this works out, but hopefully we won't get a giant oil leak and we should be alright. Mr. Scott, if you would not mind,
okay,
give this a go. I am clear. Yeah, that definitely went down, so that's positive confirmation that that's working at least. Still got no idea what that horrible racket is though. So that'll be my next job. I want to find this quickly in case it's a major problem. Got 3 seconds and then turn it off.
Okay.
Yeah, clear.
Okay.
As you've been able to see, the alternator is still spinning after, and it's making a horrible noise. So I'm going to put some PTFE lubricant in there onto the clutch, just to see if we can make it a bit quieter. I'll find a way to do that though. Everything's back together. Just going to give it a start in a second. I've got some stuff on the screen here, got intake manifold pressure and the barometric pressure, which is just the pressure outside, so it knows what's going on. The intake manifold pressure should go up by around about 7 kPa, so it should go up from about 102 to roughly 109, maybe somewhere around that area. That should be the 1 psi boost pressure at idle. Keep an eye on that one. We've got the coolant temperature on here, and then the exhaust temperatures, just to make sure everything's okay there, and the RPM, along with the mass airflow sensor, so we can see if those are all working effectively.
Right, action.
There is no action. Right, where are we? What are we doing today? So we've done plenty of stuff with this so far. I think the EGR is blocked up and horrible. We put a blanking plate on, it runs absolutely perfectly. Without the blanking plate on, it runs terribly. I've just bought the oil to put in there, and engine flush, so you can put some engine flush in the existing oil, get that run up to temperature. But to do that, I'm going to need to put the blanking plate back on, which we took off yesterday, because it's making an awful lot of smoke when it's got the blanking plate off and runs pretty bad. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to take the EGR off itself and probably give that a really good clean, and then at least we can say we think that one's working effectively. And then we've got coolant flush to put in, draining at the moment. You may be able to hear it in the background. It's just dribbling out of the bottom of the car at the moment. And then we're going to do a few flushes of that, because that was nasty. It absolutely stinks. So we're going to keep filling that and draining that, and put some coolant flush in. Let's do the EGR, and then we can look at the air fuel sensor later as well. That seems to be reading the same figure all the time, which it shouldn't be. But we're going to try and unplug that and see whether when we unplug it, it actually disappears off the ECU. And then we can see whether that is actually the problem, and then we can replace it if we need to. That is a state.
Yeah, that's a bit gummed up.
Yeah, that's that. And then the actual valve itself is all kinds of nasty. So there we go, one of those. does appear to be quite a lot of gap around that, so I don't think that's right. We've partially reassembled the EGR valve, and the next jobs will be to add flushing chemicals to both the oil and coolant systems before doing any fluid changes. Despite looking very much like an aerosol, this isn't one. I did discover while cleaning the EGR valve that a small circular piece had broken off. This meant that even when closed, the EGR valve lets exhaust gases by, disrupting the metered airflow and probably being the cause of the engine to stall when the EGR blanking plate is not installed. Really, this needs a new EGR valve.
Do you realise most people have boiled eggs for breakfast?
We'd noticed that the engine coolant temperature wasn't heating up particularly quickly and removed the old thermostat. You can see how much more quickly a new one opens and how much larger the opening is. The new thermostat was installed and I moved on to adjusting the turbo vanes, which I hope would stop it from overboosting. It's just a simple adjustment of a grub screw, but a little tricky to get to. Yeah, I'm only getting about one in every third turn though. That actually is a turn. But yeah, there you go, it's just dripped again. So these Navara steering wheels, there's an actual central piece here which does pull out, which is this piece, which is the whole airbag module. And that's just held in by a very simple spring, which you can see around here. This bit here, and then it goes all the way around. Now there's a gap here, just in the bottom, which you can see from outside the steering wheel, which is where you stick the screwdriver through. He says trying very hard. Just a little quick tip. That does need a lot more force than you think, and it's not so bad. You're not going to damage anything that's in the way down there, so just give it a really hard push with a screwdriver. Put this back together. Got this clock spring unit that actually has the mountings in it for all of these parts. So we've got the indicator stalk, and then we've got the other control stalk as well for the windscreen wipers. They all go on there. There's a mark on the shaft for the steering wheel. That is pointing absolutely dead ahead at the moment. So just need to get these into the right places. There's a little clip at the top that needs to go in. There we go. Let's put that in. That's all lined up around the outsides. And then we can start doing this one up. There's one. And that's now in. So that means we should be able to now put the indicator stalks back on and up with those connectors. There we go. They can go into the back of the unit at the bottom here. Put this other one in now, get that up, and that's there. I've still got the battery connected at the moment. Before I plug the airbag in, I'm going to disconnect the battery. I left that connected so that we can do this. Get my fingers in and clip that back together. You can see on the steering wheel there's a hole there. That hole needs to match up with this section here, and also this lead needs to go through that hole just there in the bottom in the middle. You can take off the clip that's holding it all together, line everything up. There's a mark on the steering wheel, and there we go, we've got the steering wheel back on, so that's there. Now I've got this lead poking through, got the main lead which I need to plug in, and we'll show you that in a sec. You can slide that one in just fine, and then on this unit we've got both the airbag connector and we've got a connector for the horn as well. So the horn's on the back here, as you can see, that little tab that plugs into the green cable, and on the other side we've got the airbag activator, which is there, which also needs to go in. So we'll be able to connect those in just a second. I'm going to go and disconnect the battery, leave it for 10 minutes, and we'll come back and put this on. It's a bit rainy, as you can probably hear. Put battery off, leave that for 10 minutes, come back. Going to put on the nut onto the steering wheel, make sure that's on properly, and we'll torque that up to the right spec in a minute. There we go. Now it's been off a while, put this back together, nothing else to put in there. So let's get the horn circuit back on, and then we've got the airbag to put in. Never like doing this, never fun. Put that back in, there we are. Put the safety clip back in. Do not like doing that at all. Now we should be able to clip the steering wheel panel back in. There we are. We've got that. We have no battery. We do have one reassembled steering wheel. Feels nice and tight. That's good. I'm going to put the battery back on and see if we can start this up, and then we can start having a look to see whether there are any error messages and whether the airbag light has gone out now. So we've still got an airbag error showing. We may have to clear that down, see if we can get rid of that, and then see if there's a problem with any of the wiring. Unfortunately, no joy. Looks like the airbag module itself is also faulty. Hoping we can send that away to get it repaired. The airbag unit. Taking this piece out, and this centre piece here. Taking off the glove box, all different screws, and now separating the front and the back, and we should then be able to get down there and get the module out. One module, yes. Now I've got this module out, we can get this sent off to Crash Data. Sent them the list of the codes that are on there, and they said these quite often go wrong. They just need the software resetting on them. It doesn't look like it's necessarily crash data. Could just be that there's been a fault with it that needs resetting. So they can have a look at that. Going to send that off. It's about £60 plus the VAT. So at the moment that's £72. So going to get that sent off. When we get that back, we can put it back in, see if everything works again.
Thought I'd just do a very quick recap. The turbo's been rebuilt, set up, and is working well. The EGR valve is most definitely not working. The map sensor started off okay, but does seem to be a bit intermittent. The clock spring was definitely broken. The airbag control module was definitely broken. That's now been replaced. The inside of the car's all been put back together. The vehicle's now running, all in one piece, and is now ready for its MOT.
So the Navara is back from the MOT. It didn't do particularly well, to be honest. The engine and everything was fine with the engine. There's some major structural rust underneath though on the chassis. The spring at the front has also snapped. We didn't really look at any of this stuff, so we just put it in for an MOT to see what it failed on. It also had brake imbalance at the back, so we're going to have a look at those pieces as well. But some major work to do there. What was a quick fix, now really quite a big one, so we're going to have a look at these, see what we can sort out. We weren't entirely expecting this to be as long as it is, so we might get 4 videos out of this rather than 3. It's a never-ending series, that sounds brilliant, a never-ending series. So we'll try and get as many videos as possible by the look of it out of this. Look forward to the next one and see where we are.